Hey, I'm Pat. Welcome to Daily Devo. Today we're going to talk about freedom. In January 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. In August of 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. stood on the steps of our Capitol delivering his famous, powerful speech titled, "I Have a Dream." Mr. King proclaimed, "Let freedom ring from every mountainside, let freedom ring." And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to say, "Free at last, free at last." Did you catch that those words were uttered 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed? 100 years after slaves were officially freed, there was still injustice and slavery. And today, we continue to fight against these injustices. By the way, it's no different for many of us in our spiritual lives, for many of our neighbors, for many in our community. Christ has come to set us free, to transform our lives, and yet we choose, our neighbors choose, our cities choose to live in slavery. Slavery to lust, slavery to materialism, slavery to individualism, slavery to injustice, slavery to arrogance, slavery to you fill in the blank. In Luke chapter 4, Jesus gives what I like to refer to as his mission statement. At this point in his life, Jesus' fame has begun to grow, and he's been performing miracles all over the Galilee region and publicly announcing himself as the Messiah, but not in his hometown. Not in the place he'd spent nearly 30 years of his life. Not in the little village where everyone knew him as Yeshua the carpenter. So Jesus goes home and he attends the worship service in the Nazareth synagogue. During the service, he stands up and he reads from the scroll where they just happened to be reading in the book of Isaiah. Jesus takes the scroll and reads from Isaiah chapter 61. Now, I'm reading it as it is recorded in Luke chapter 4, verse 18. Imagine the scene. Imagine all these people sitting on the benches around him. They've heard rumors of all these miraculous signs he has been doing. But then he's also just the carpenter who lived down the street from them for nearly 3 decades, and they hadn't seen any of these great signs and wonders. Now they hear him read these words from Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Now imagine the scene. Look what the next verse says. "Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him." Oh, awe, wonder, confusion. Imagine how charged this scene must have been. The atmosphere in this little crowded synagogue is probably supercharged with curiosity. Everyone in the audience is wondering what their townsman is going to say in response to this scripture. You know what he does next? He's sitting down now, and every eye in the place is on him with intent. I imagine it's nearly silent in the room. Many are probably wondering if he will speak about the glory days of Israel. But he doesn't. The first word out of his mouth is today. Listen to verse 21. He began by saying to them, "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." Wow! He's saying, you've just heard scripture make history. It came true just now in this place. Jesus is saying, I'm the Messiah that you've been waiting for. Wow, it would have been so amazing to be there. And by the way, they knew what he was saying, because if you read the next verses, many of them tried to kill him because they recognized what claim he was making. And to them, he was committing blasphemy and claiming to be God. For today, here's what I want you to note. That Jesus is quoting the passage from Isaiah as his mission statement. He's saying, this is what I came to do. And then he mentions in several different ways that he came to bring freedom, to set captives free. Later in John chapter 8, Jesus would say, when the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. Listen, our own country's history is a reminder that sometimes when slaves are set free, they don't actually get to experience the totality of that freedom. Jesus set you free. Jesus set me free. May we choose to live out that freedom today, right now. Would you choose to experience the totality of the freedom and deliverance that Jesus has provided us? Don't miss the next few weeks of our Daily Devos as we unpack what this freedom looks like and what this freedom can do in our everyday, ordinary lives. Free at last, free at last.